Our panel members have gotten it already. I can see the audience members are also ready. Everyone with a lot of words. Welcome everyone to our first panel discussion between academics and industry to talk about the future of fashion. I'm going to hand over to our MC for the evening, Jenna. She is our program coordinator for BCom programs and the PA buying programs. Enjoy.
Thank you. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being part of our first panel discussion with amazing panelists. You can see they're ready to talk. They've been talking since they arrived in this room. So as Petra said, I'm here in the capacity of MC for the evening. I'm going to guide you through, there's quite a few technical things, okay, so we're going to get to that. But before we go into any of the business side of things, I am going to start with a joke. That's okay. Okay. So there's a boy, and his name is Little Johnny. And Little Johnny has the same route home every single day. And on his way home one day, it was a very special day because he sees his dad's car parked in the park. And he gets excited, he goes up to his dad's car, he looks inside, and there he sees Dad and Auntie Mary. Mary's very comfortable. Dad's giving her kisses, being so nice, even helping her take her jacket off. So Little Johnny is so excited to tell Mom, so he runs home. Goes, Mom, you won't believe what I saw. I saw Dad's car in the park. There he was, giving Auntie Mary all those kisses to him close. She interrupts him. She says, Little Johnny, this is a good story for the supper table. So, supper time, the whole family's around the table. Mom says, Johnny, tell your story. Little Johnny says, Dad, you won't believe it. I saw your car parked in front of us. There's Dad, sinking in his chair, red in the face because he knows what it is. He says, yeah, I looked in the car and there you were with Auntie Mary, doing what Mom does to Uncle Bob when you're away for business. There's a reason why I tell jokes, right? I always tell jokes. I'm not a stand-up comedian, I promise. So this one has some reasoning. Okay, so first of all, we're here to listen to stories tonight. It's important for us not to interrupt. When I was looking at how to do panel discussions well, they basically said the person who came up with the idea of a panel just liked having a conversation with four friends and having an audience. And unfortunately, unfortunately, we are going to reserve our Q&A to the end of the panel. Okay? We do have an amazing technological feature, which is menti.com. Does anyone know menti.com? Yeah, all of us who have been in online space. So menti.com is here for your reactions. If you love it, if you're curious about why our panelists said what they did, likes, dislikes. Also, sometimes we just feel that. And the cat, I feel there's a little cat there. If you feel a little bit mysterious, you can have a cat. Okay. So please feel free to use Menti, but we don't want to make any interruptions during the panelist discussion. Okay. And also, it's important for us to hear their stories. We chose them for a reason. Right. So, just some housekeeping. For those of you who at some point will need a human moment, there's a gender-neutral bathroom on this level, and there's also female and male bathrooms downstairs. If you go left on the stairs, we are having soup for those of you who just want to warm your souls, and networking on the balcony over here. All right. Anything the code over here. You can all, like, you know how they say, put your phone away? I'm saying, take your phone out. Okay? And then you can, oh, look, there's a like. Oh, look at that. Okay, so there are people online as well. More guys. And the code 7569124. Okay. Are we ready to get started? Are we ready to get started? Good to know. All right, so I'm going to start by introducing each of our panelists, but obviously also to let you guys know that there's a reason why we do what we do tonight. And the topic of tonight's event and panel is really the future of fashion, design, and styling. That's what we framed it around. And then focusing on the 5 pillars of the 2030 master plan from the DTI. And the 5 pillars include market growth, both domestic and international, value chain, localization, just to wake you up, sorry, competitiveness, advancement, value chain transformation, and skills and technological advancement. Right, so Theo, Mr. Theo Mbeni, everybody, give him a hand of please. So Theo is the CEO and founder of Symbit. He's the first person to receive the fellowship to the Studio School of Action in 2022. And it's a result of Theo's love for style, fashion, and current trends, as well as his focus on fashion research and mentorship, of course. One of his mentors. How many mentors are here today? 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them. Okay. And of course, Theo in 2008 obtained his econ degree from UP. He also has his econ honors degree in financial management. So a little bit different than fashion, but we are here because of this passion for fashion, where he became one of the best and leading male image and style consultants in South Africa through his brand Mr. Slimfit, and your new brand, which is Mr. Tailored Experiences. And guys, if you want entertainment on Instagram, please go follow Mr. Slimfit, Mr. Tailored Experience. Right, he provides wardrobe makeovers, made to measure tailoring, and bespoke services to clients. All right, and what I love is that Theo has a slogan: work hard, dress well, stay humble, which I think encompasses this man altogether. Thank you for being here tonight. Theo? Next to Theo is Ingrid. Ingrid Smart is a protege of the Common Fashion. All right, and she's a graduate as of 2022 and also completing her honors degree here at Studio School of Fashion. And her research topic is actually in the space of potential of department start business model and utilizing a community hub. Very excited to have you here. And you're also a part-time tutor, like just all around studio person around here. So thank you so much for being with us on the panel tonight. And then we have Shanghai, Nyagweta, Shanghai is a qualified and experienced product designer, brand builder, and product developer. She has successfully designed and managed brands of various kinds and design categories for nearly 2 decades. Some of you have only been alive for almost 2 decades. Over the course of her career, she has consulted over 52 established and emerging fashion brands in Africa, helping them plan, strategize, research, design, and manufacture, as well as launch successful fashion businesses. As well as helping us here at Stadio, and previously Livestock, you were integral last year for our spring sessions as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure for program. There you go, and fashion. I mean, she's just all around awesome. Thank you. Jessica is the founder and creative director for Flora, which actually represents and embodies the concept of for you are. Right? She's also a consultancy media platform that offers sustainable styling solutions for the busy African woman. So as a former fashion editor and stylist to the stars, she draws inspiration from cycling, thrifting, and conscious shopping movements to deliver wardrobe and beauty choices with longevity, sustainability, and individuality at its core. She also obtained her honors here at LISA, / of course now, Saudi School of Fashion, and she's currently doing her master's degree. We won't talk about that, okay? Jessica also heads up the Johannesburg chapter of Fashion Revolution, a non-profit that takes a stand against the exploitation of garment workers around the world and aims to make the fashion industry more sustainable, humane, and people-friendly. So welcome, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Right, so we started with Theo. Yes. Theo, you are the first fellow of Saudi School of Fashion, and you're representing what is the beginning of the important relationship between industry and us at the School of Fashion, which is education. So looking at what we see in the master plan for 2030, what is your opinion, or why is it important for both education and industry to work together towards these goals for 2030?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me here. It's exciting to always be here and be able to share with the young up and coming as well. Share those with fellow colleagues in the industry. So for me, I mean, it's important for industry and education to work together because we do not live in silos. And one of the reasons, the partnership between Mr. Stanford and Stadio was because of that. I was saying earlier that we have our first group of interns, which is top one. It's been with us in the company for about a month now. And the importance that I've seen between industry and education is the aha moments, with Otto and Bologna that we're mentoring currently, they're intending with us currently. And, I remember when I was in school, when I went into industry, I got into industry and certain things that I learned from school were aha moments. You learn things theoretically, and then you get to the industry and then you start doing things and you're like, okay, I didn't understand this when I was back in school, but now it makes more sense. So I feel like when we incorporate those two together as a learning platform, it makes it even more practical. Because sometimes we focus too much on the theory and not so much on the practicality of things. And sometimes education gets left behind. Industry, the world moves so fast and things change overnight. Today we know the power of social media. With education, sometimes it's what you're teaching is modules that are still, backdated. And it's important that we have the history and understanding of what happened in the past so that we can be able to move forward. But also it's important to understand what's happening now and also be able to move forward. So when we merge the two together, it helps in us working, making sure that we're creating the best students, because the history is important, the practicality is important as well. And the student gets the best of both. So for me, that's why I found that it's very important for students to be able to understand what they are learning and also to see how industry works. Because when Sokwa and Norana came in, I sat them down and said, yes, you guys are learning about fashion with different fields. One is in the media space, one is in the fashion space. It's within the same industry. And one of the things that I wanted to teach them was the business of fashion, which is one thing that I'm very passionate about. And I told them, I separated it into 3 parts. I said, business is divided into 3 parts. You've got the back office, you've got the middle office, and you've got the front office. You need to understand all 3. And you need to, as a creative, you need to know which one you want to focus on. You know, most creatives want to focus on being creatives. They disregard or what's the word? They neglect the business side of things. And being in business is very important to sustain yourself and to grow a brand. And so, for me, how I structured their program, they started at the back office, you know, and then they went and spent time with me in the front office. So back office, they spend time with our tailors, the sisters, and many more, because you know, the guys that I have, they have more than 20 years experience. They spend some time with them learning. And for them, it was aha moments. Say, oh, these are some of the things that we learned at school. They came, they spent time with me and my PA in the front office. So that's where we client facing. They sat with me when I sat down with clients. I taught them how to, you know, engage and speak to clients, because we deal with clients that are very high end, how to speak to clients like that, how to cater for clients like that, you know, how to deal with certain issues. And they learned about the front office. But that was not all. And I told them they need to go and learn about the middle office, which is compliance, and which is very important in running a business. So they spend time with our accountants, and you know, they spend time inside learning about tax, learning about SaaS, learning about compliance and all those things. And which is for me a 360 that students need to get. And something that I feel like when I was in university, something that I would have loved to have received in terms of my experience, you know, and experiences. And I feel like building for the future, we need to incorporate more. It's going to help us in terms of producing students that are not only work ready, but also that are ready to run businesses. Because it's important for us to also start pushing the fact that students also need to start looking at the fact that most of them are going to be employees and not employees. You know, for us to grow our economy, and the vision for is for SMEs to employ about 80 to 90% of the jobs that are being, projected. So we need to make sure that there's more and more SMEs that are coming in, there's more young people that are going to business. You know, we need to make sure that we are producing young people that are ready to start businesses, even if they go to industry. They're going into industry prepared and well and understanding the dynamics of what happens in there. Because I never disregard industry. Industry is very important. I wanted to corporate, I was in corporate for 6 years. My business is where it is today because of corporate. Corporate taught me how to build structures, how to build systems, and how to speak to clients, how to deal with certain things. And for me, that was my university. I needed to go through that to be able to start my business and run it the way I do. So for me, education and industry working hand to hand is very important for the vision 2030.
Amazing. Thank you, Theo. I absolutely agree with you. And there's a concept that just popped in my head while you were speaking, that yes, a lot of our students will become entrepreneurs, but there's also a concept called intrapreneurs, which is even if you are in a retail or in a business, that you can think like an entrepreneur within a business. And I think that is where we will start to push businesses in the future to get to the progress that we need it to be economically and from a business sustainability side. So I absolutely agree that our students shouldn't just have knowledge, they should also have that experience and that drive for innovation and an entrepreneurial spirit in that. So thank you so much for your insights and for bringing that alive, really, when we're seeing our students. Thank you. I'm going to carry on to Shanghai. I'm going to jump, look at that, you're on your toes. So Shanghai, I was very inspired last week. I attended a conference and one of the panelists said, she brought up, her name is Sazini Mojalengo. I'm going to give her credit for this one. So she said that business cannot succeed in a failing economy. And unfortunately, that is a huge reality in which we live in South Africa. And her solution, which she did give, was a shared value economy, where as business grows, community grows, and it goes hand in hand. So from your experience in the entrepreneurial space, have you noticed any emerging trends? in the fashion entrepreneurial space that you think that it's important for us in the industry in South Africa to notice?
Such a big, loaded question. I have to like sit and think about this because, especially with what the environment has been for the last 2 years, it's been very encouraging as much as it's been very scary. So I'm gonna focus on the positives because that's what we want to push forward with. So on a macro level, when we look at companies like Fashini, we've now noticed that the big retailers, because of COVID, and as devastating as it was, what it actually did was force these big retailers to now look locally for their sourcing and manufacturing, which is a huge difference. And that in itself is encouraging because that industry was on the brink of dying with imports. And now it's no longer seen as a cost-laden thing to manufacture locally. It's now seen as a competitive advantage. So that's on a macro level, a huge thing. In addition to that, we've also seen these big retailers are now no longer just fighting to buy international brands and bring them into South Africa. We're actually seeing them fighting to buy local brands. You've seen Yuppie Chef and Earthchild and Keto, and all these brands that have been around for decades that were not valued by the local industry. Now these big companies are saying, actually, this is where the money is at. We need to invest in our own. So we're seeing that trend on the macro level with the bigger companies, which is amazing for us, and especially for the graduates, to know that if those companies are being bought out, that means they're being grown, which means there's more space for our graduates who do want to enter the work field. So that's the big picture. And then when you look at the middle picture, and you look at companies such as Tu and Drip, which started as small companies. Now, what's fascinating about companies like that is that they're now identifying markets within the South African economy that were underserved and ignored. Those markets, those shoe brands, which are now being worn very commercially amongst a lot of people, were started in the townships because they were not being catered to. You'd have to go to Sandton to go buy an Adidas, but there's just something just as cool and homegrown that started from the townships, and that's an amazing thing. And that's creating jobs and opportunities for local people who probably never had access to that space at a point. We have to face the fact that the arts is a privileged space to be in. It's very capital intensive to start, which can be quite scary for a lot of people, which is why Theo's right. Starting with an actual retail job and learning as much as you can in that environment before you start your own business is super important. And you'll find a lot of successful business people, the ones who go straight into an entrepreneurial career, don't actually come from a fashion background. They come from finance, they come from accounting, because designers become with this big creative passion, and we tend to ignore the small things like CIPC and stars and getting an accountant for this one. Those small little things that are sort of going to determine whether your business is going to do well. But that's sort of like the middle part. And then the really exciting part, looking at the smaller brands, the ones that you guys are going to start, the boutique brands, there has been, especially in the last 2 years, there was a time when it started with YD and the space a long time ago. There was just this quiet period where we just were not seeing collaboration amongst these small brands. And then in the last 2 years, there's been this explosion. I'll even say the last 5 years, but especially in the last 2 years, where we're seeing Rise Africa and Egg and Convoy, and designers are starting to see that when we work together, we actually have a better chance of capturing the market. Because we're now, when I graduated, I won't give away my age, it was impossible to have a store in a mall, have a presence where people actually go and shop. We'd always have to look for these back-end things. There was no online shopping. Oh my gosh. When I started my brand online, people were using it as a catalog to look online and they would phone me and say, I want to order this. And I'm like, no, but just go on the website and order it there. But now, between online, which is completely opened up the world for startup brands, and collaboration, sharing spaces in well-trafficked areas, that spirit of collaboration means that most brands have a fighting chance to be successful in the industry today. And I encourage you, between your classmates and your colleagues and your mentors, speak to them, because it's a very small industry. Everybody knows everyone. Now I know 3 more people to add to my roster. roster of every other designer that I get to work with. And recommendations and opportunities always come from your colleagues. It's not usually advertised. The more people that you work with and collaborate with, the better chance your business is actually going to have to succeed. So that's a major trend, is that not to work in silos, like Theo said. Working in silos is a death sentence for a small business. You have to open yourself up and share your art, which is, in this day and age of Instagram and TikTok, like it's not just about the clothes anymore. It's about your story and being authentic and sharing the behind the scenes and how do we make this. And these are the people who are working for us. They're real people with real families who make and pour their love and talent into these garments. And when you buy from us, you're bettering the economy. Every time a local brand is bought from, that's a job that's being created. And lastly, what I'd like to point out, the trend of making things locally is such an important one, because the fashion industry is one of the few industries where a designer cannot work on their own from day one. If you're in tech, a computer and a brain and an idea, you can become a millionaire. It's impossible in fashion. You need to hire seamstresses, salespeople, machinists from day one. So that's why it's even more important for these startup businesses, especially like within my consultancy, because within Design Native, I take people who have this dream to own a brand, and I hold their hand from start to launch for them to have a viable product into the market. So when they have a successful business, I come back and see them 2 years later, and they're employing 4 people. I've done this 52 times. I've had people who've had a chance to quit their day jobs, and not all of them are coming from fashion. So you as fashion students have a leg up. But they can actually employ people off when they have a business that's actually making money, and it's not just an expensive hobby. So it's really important that you guys learn the business behind fashion. That's very, very important. And always have, and know that you need to work in a collaborative space as startups. And then always look to see what the bigger retailers are doing. It's all interconnected. They want to work with you, but they don't want to work with people who don't know what they're doing. They don't just want creative people with big ideas. They want to know where the money's at. They want to understand what your business is, who you're targeting. So lastly, where your passion as a designer will be successful is where your passion meets your customers' tangible value, where they can see tangible value in what you're making. So find your niche. Don't try to be everything to everyone. That's going forward. That's super important because the competition is so high. So find your niche. And when I say niche, I mean super niche. I've got a client we're working on a range of transgender underwear for people transitioning. That's super niche, but within that niche, that's a massive market that they can become a millionaire, you know what I mean? So really focus on something and work within the communities that you understand, like Batu and Drip. They understood how to meet that need for that community, and then it will grow from that point onwards.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thank you. And I do think, even when we look at Theo's journey as well, finding the niche that he found made the culture as well that he wanted, and the lifestyle brand that came with it. And now expanding into other areas, which makes sense to the culture that you create, 100%. There were so many things that threw in my head while you were talking. So no,
It's a big question.
it's a big question, and I think you brought up some amazing things as well, because when I looked at the 2030 master plan, there was number one, the reason for going overseas isn't necessarily that it's cheaper. There's actually a lot of evidence that say that we actually have the capacity, and it's not necessarily more expensive here in South Africa. It's just about making those connections. And we had Mr. Price look at our career day yesterday and today, and I was asking the buyers, like, who makes those decisions to go local or international? And it's the buyer. It's trends are coming in from overseas, so the buyer decides to go, and then obviously you have a department of people who are making those connections. So we're seeing more and more of those retailers who are making those decisions, and it's very exciting to see, but it needs to be more and more what we are.
100%. And like that's to fast fashion. Another thing with local manufacturing is people are realizing we don't need to make things in 2 days and have it in market. We want to make things that last. So if we have that mentality, and corporate is adopting that mentality, because that's how we already work as small brands. We're slow fashion brands, because we cannot see a trend on TikTok today and have it in stores by tomorrow. We just can't. And the corporates are realizing actually it's not an advantage for us to be making things that fast. And if we're working with local industries, we're building our local societies, but we're also making product that people love at a price point that they can afford. So great on them.
Brilliant. So it leads me to Jessica's question. So Jessica, obviously, what I understand about the work that you do is that it's really incorporating needing to change consumers and businesses' attitudes, their mindset and their behaviors, which is extremely difficult. I teach consumer buying behavior, so I really understand the depth in which it takes to change consumers' minds. And we are seeing a new movement within fashion, which is online, yes, but even more than that, we're looking at the metaverse. We're looking at a new space completely that's uncharted territories. Do you think it's important for us to get involved in the South African industry with something like the metaverse?
I thought about this question, and as someone who's in currently sustainable fashion and working for Fashion Revolution and Faura, our brand, it's been so difficult to try and show people the value in sustainable fashion. Even though we know Africa has always been sustainable, right? But and I'm just going to be all over the place if you allow me to. But okay, we've been sustainable all our lives in terms of sharing clothes. You think about your granny, mom, aunt, we've been there. But not only that, at the student level, I'm sure students exchange clothes all the time, going to parties and all those things. But it's been incredible to connect that shift from don't buy from a fast fashion brand, support a local brand. It's just been like such an interesting space to see how we are so attached to our clothes, attached to how we shop. And with South Africa, it's even been more interesting in the sense that I could say Africa in a way that we don't even have almost like a much more broader way of how we're supposed to be discarding our clothes. Donating seems to be the only thing that guiding us in terms of how we're supposed to get rid of our clothes. So when you talk about metaverse, it's like the next level. So that's really forcing people now to think outside of even the sustainable box, But I thought about it, and for a young, I didn't necessarily want to answer it from my generation. I think our generation, we are that generation where we were told that the internet is coming, and we were like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. What does that mean? I still remember that night when it was like 21st century, I don't know what you call it, the millennium, there was something, Y2K. So I still remember that, and we were gonna die. That was the only night that we were gonna live. And then so with mental, so I don't want to answer it from that point of view, because with us, we've seen that transition, and we're still alive. But I think with the younger generation, that's where they live, every day, throughout the day, on their phones. And I was also thinking about just the movement when the camera came into place, and we were told that we're probably doing everything on our phones, I've got my bank account on my phone, Snapchat, Apple Pay, everything. So then it's possible, right? It's possible that we may just find ourselves in that space where we have to look at fashion differently and we have to shop differently. However, I'm not sure that a South African market, or even an African market, it's not all about value. We also have to look at ourselves in terms of what is it that we really need. Do we need that? I'm led by this whole idea, especially with the work that we do, Fashion Revolution, Faura. It's all about purpose. It's all about what is the need for it. And I'm sure there will be a need. You can't put everything in one box. There will be industries where that, it's required to advance in the next 10 years or so. But I think from an everyday woman's wardrobe, I think it may not necessarily be something that women will embrace immediately. At Faura, the work that we do, we try and teach women how to redirect how they shop, how to change their minds, how they look at their clothes, what they think of their clothes. Fashion Revolution, it's all about, just trying to show people a much more conscious way of living, from a workers to an everyday woman. So I think with the metaverse, I think it's one of those things where Africa, we may just be, not necessarily an industry for it. We may just have to think about what does it mean localizing it? Are we going to lose jobs? Are we, are there more people who are going to be disadvantaged? Of course, from a student level, if you're skilled, that is a much huge opportunity for you to advance in that and grow your career. But I think for people who are, designers and all those things, it might just be a tool that we use just so that we can ground, our seamstresses, all the people that you guys were talking about who work behind the designers. And I'm saying that not to hold us back, but from a sustainable point of view, to say that we still need that woman, that mama, that gogo to have a job, and so we don't necessarily want that huge industry change where we find ourselves in a situation where in most industries now with IT and all those people don't have jobs. And I think with an economy like South Africa, as much as that field will be good for us, we also have to think about where we are, and what role will it play in our everyday life. So I know it sounds like I'm here and there. I'm just torn about where it's supposed to play a role, but I think sometimes we have to be led by what is the purpose, and where we need it, and where we need it, implement it, and where we don't necessarily need the whole industry to be changed by, like I was just thinking to myself, like, how are we gonna buy clothing online? Already we're struggling to buy online, like with metaverse, it's just, we're getting there.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and
We're getting there.
we're definitely at the space of value. So where is the value in it? And it took South Africans a very long time compared to the rest of the world just to get online. And online shopping, I mean, if you think about township situation, the reality is that shopping centers are still the brick and mortar is still a big part of South African culture. And the metaverse, what does it bring? What more can it add? Does it give accessibility? Or does it take it away? So absolutely, I think it's still very much a question.
And I mean, one of the things that was worrying is the fact that already in the South African market, there's still so many people that are left behind. The gap is becoming so broad between the poor and the rich, or middle class and the lower class, that I'm not sure that we should be putting our efforts in saying, organizations like Stadio, how do we help that woman in Zanini, to be part of us, this side of the market? How do we help those small villages? There's so many talented kids who are making clothes, who are making jewelry, who are making whatever you can think of. I think for a market like Africa, I think that's our purpose, that's our strength, But having said that, that doesn't mean that we don't have room for it. There's room for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I do think it's still very much up in the air. I know the fashion industry and the luxury industry, specifically overseas, are looking at it as important. But there has been a question of, is it just a trend? Is it a fad? Is it something that will, in 5 years, be like, that thing that happened? So thank you for your thoughts on that. I do think it's directed us to the idea that maybe we need to just focus in on what this industry needs right now. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to go over to Ingrid. And Ingrid, I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit because, it's wonderful to hear a student voice. Industry, like we pointed out, is very important, but the student is the future. You are here to change what we are doing right now. So listening to what all the other panelists have said, what excites you about being a student and going into the fashion industry?
Like Jessica said, I'm going to be all over the place because obviously I didn't know what my fellow panelists were going to say tonight. I knew what my question was, I just didn't know what I was going to base my answer off of. And the whole time I was thinking of, like, is there a word to describe what I'm currently feeling? And to me, the word that came up was comfort. From what Theo said, there's comfort in knowing that the fashion community are embracing students, they're incorporating students into the industry, and they're welcoming students, and they're welcoming our ideas. Creating is a team sport. When you create as a collective rather than creating as your own, you get all these different points of views and ideas, and I think oftentimes in many industries, students are almost left behind because it's assumed that they don't know enough about the industry. But students have amazing ideas. They've been doing reading, they've been making things up, they've been seeing all these different things. And it's nice to know that people in the industry like Theo who have made it are opening the door for us to actually get there. It's also very comforting to know that there's no pressure in me when I graduate from honors this year that by next year I should be a business owner and I should be a multimillionaire and I should have made it. It's a process and you need to take your time and you're never going to stop learning. Even though you finish studying, continuously throughout your career, whether you work in corporate, whether you do whatever, you're going to be learning throughout. I'm just organizing my thoughts in my head. I have a whole mind map drawn out and it's just not blurry.
Learning back here, haven't you? Yes.
A few other points that the panelists have brought up. Oh, another point that when I was introduced to Jessica earlier, she said to me, "When are you finishing? And I'll pray for you." Again, that was such a comforting thing to hear. To again know that they're looking up, they're excited to see what you're going to be one day. To know that there's this, become a part of the community, become a part of us, we're gonna get to this 2030 master plan together. All of us are eventually gonna play our roles in the 2030 master plan. The topic of community came up, and my research for an honor student, one thing that I did notice when it came to consumer values and consumer value shifts was this importance of community in a bunch of different areas within the fashion industry. Community in the sense of retail spaces are becoming meeting places, are becoming places for people to get together and communities to form within retail spaces. Brands themselves are developing their own brand identities and communities within their employment and people working together. And it's nice to know that the fashion industry as a whole, the local industry, is being uplifted as a community rather than putting smaller brands up against each other. It's more of a where can we give a helping hand to each other. And the question you posed to Jessica, that's also something I've been thinking about a lot lately. When you think of fashion capitals around the world, you think of Milan, even Tokyo. One of the things that contribute to them becoming fashion capitals is that they have their own unique identity. And I think a big factor that's going to contribute to the success of the South African fashion industry is that the moment South Africa creates its own identity as a fashion capital, it identifies that we can take ideas from around the globe, but we need to make it South African. We need to look at the South African consumer, we need to look at the South African market. And something like a metaverse has potential, but it needs to be the South African metaverse, done in a truly unique South African way. And knowing that as a student, I can be a part of that process, I can be a part of that identity forming, and knowing as well that the research that I'm doing right now is actually important. It's ideas that I've heard pop up here, and knowing that, okay, I'm on the right track. I know what I'm doing. This gives me a little bit of confidence right now. So it's just, I think tonight is really things that are keeping me awake at night. Just put me at ease, especially when you reach out to me and ask me to be on the panel. The first thing was that imposter syndrome of, oh, should I really be sitting up here next to people who know what they're talking about? But I feel so much more like, actually, I do also have my space in the fashion industry, even though I haven't been in it for a long time. I'm still part of the team that's eventually going to get it to where it needs to go.
Great. Welcome to the team, everybody. Yeah. Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you to the panelists also to, really have, I think for all of us to feel almost that comfort as well. Discomfort in the fact that we know that there's change and there's movement, but also comfort that there is a community that we belong to. So and I think the identity you talked about, we are very multifaceted as a country. And that's part of our identity. So it doesn't have to be that unique identity that we have in other countries. What makes us special is that we multi-variants that we have in this country. So I'm also really looking forward to that too. Great. So last question to all the panelists. You can answer where you want to, you can say goodbye if you want to. So from your experience in the world's work, what does the future of fashion hold for South Africa? And also just to maybe put that in a different twist, how can South Africa be a force, how can the fashion industry in South Africa be a force for good to the South African economy?
Yeah, it's always the ladies first for the majority here. So what really encourages me, given that I was a fashion student like you some years ago, when I studied, I was really excited to move to South Africa and study fashion because it was the era of Stone Cherry and Sun Goddess, and the music was popping. I think you were all of 10 years young and independent, and there was my choice to come to study in South Africa was because South Africa didn't have a handwriting yet. I could have gone to Paris, but there's a Paris handwriting. I could have gone to Italy, but there's an Italy handwriting. And I wanted to discover what my handwriting as an African was. And there was no better environment to do that than in South Africa because everything was new and shiny. And when I started, I started in corporate, and I've seen so much change in corporate. And by the time I started my own label, I was 24 when I started my label. And just the movement from pop-ups to online and figuring out that space, it was all new and it was so exciting. And then after all these years of running my own brand and doing retail and all of those things, I took a step back and I'm now looking at what you guys are going to be doing. What's your experience? What's going to make you guys excited about the next 10 to 20 years of fashion? And one, I wish social media existed in the way that it existed when I started my brand, because I literally was boots on the ground, muddy, in the trenches, trying to find customers and trying to have them buy into my brand. It was a lot of work. And now I get to just pick up my phone, post something, tell someone a story, and I'm going to get 1 or 2 new people who are buying into what I want, which means for you guys, when you start your brands, if you know who you're talking to, access them like this. And that doesn't just mean it's in South Africa. If you can win over your South African audience, then you can win your global audience just as quickly. That's why you see people like Tebe and Rosa just winning, because they're visible. And the fact that you guys have such visibility, it's not fashion is no longer something that is reserved for the few. Now anyone who's got a real passion and is solving, when I say real problems, whenever someone says, find a problem to solve, and I'm like, I make clothes. Like, what problem am I solving? There are many, as a fashion designer, when you think of a niche market that's underserved, that's solving a problem. So when you guys narrow it down, you don't have to be so big, like Fashini or Mr. Price, where you're making everything for everyone within a massive market segment. You can find the smallest segment in South Africa and know that if you can find 10,000 people who love it here, you can find 100,000 people who love it in aesthetic, 1 million people who love it globally, and you're actually able to provide that product for them. That is so exciting for you guys. It's huge, yeah.
Thanks.
I think also for me, just to add to what you guys said, it's the whole idea that after COVID, this particularly for students, after COVID, we find ourselves, particularly in the South African market, where fashion, finally, for students, there's this huge gap. Sustainability is coming in. You have this space to really rediscover. We are in the space where fashion is transitioning itself to a new space completely, where we're using raw materials. Just this whole about fabrication and material. It's the most exciting time. So it's the most exciting time in terms of when you're building a brand, you can literally make it whatever you want. You can literally make it into how you envisage this whole idea about, the capitals that, we were talking about the capital of South Africa in terms of fashion. And I think that is like the most exciting space. And some of us, where we are now, it wasn't necessarily planned, but it was taking advantage of the gap, that presented itself. I was chatting to her about how Talita was hardcore. I'm sure if she was here, this is one of the lecturers. I'm sure if she was here, she would probably be thinking, like, how did we even get here? But because it was a struggle, it was a struggle. But it's really just how COVID has opened up this gap for young people, and I guess we're still young as well, to take advantage of telling our stories differently. And particularly in the South African fashion industry, I think it's changing from what we used to know it as. We used to know it as, I guess, using this type of fabric, I guess, buying from China, I guess, all these things, how we used to source fashion. And only because that is changing and how we need to care about the planet and global warming and all those elements as they're taking place, you get to benefit, in terms of just doing whatever you want.
Absolutely. And I think about Tim Magugu in that sense that, even now, he's taking his stories of his childhood, which are authentic to him but relate so well to the audience that he's speaking to, and making fashion that really means something. And I think because we now see Africa as a destination, or at least an authentic space, it's not just, here's this African print that you can use. It's actually like there's stories, there's rich amount that we can find here and actually express very well and authentically to the globe, and that's really awesome. Sorry, that's the mic.
Thank you. So obviously I don't have a lot of work experience in the fashion industry. I mean, being a student, I've always bartended in Waitress, but that's not really very relevant right now. But it is transferable skills, you all that. But one of the brands I did my internship with last year, one of the things that I saw, like the first part of the question is from all the work experience, what I see for the future of South Africa. Local brand, they also produce clothing for other local brands in Cape Town. It was really cool to see almost cult-like followings coming from local brands. Where 5 years ago it felt like, is everyone wore cotton on, everyone needs to wear cotton on. It's almost cool to be niche now. It's cool to have your brand, it's a smaller brand, and you rep this brand hardcore, on Instagram posting things for them. So it's really cool to see smaller brands really building a following and really being supported by their local communities. And then the second question, the future for the economy. As a recent graduate, as someone who's going to graduate from honors, one of the biggest stresses I think is there employment for me? Are there opportunities available? And knowing that there is this investment from the government in the local fashion industry, I know that opportunities are going to be opening up. Employment is going to be more readily available, but there's also a space for growth within the industry. So even if I start at one point, as the industry grows and as it contributes to the economy and more jobs become available, eventually I can climb in my career and eventually get to a point where I'm a maternity legal boss.
Yes, you are. Theo?
I think I speak from a business of fashion side of things. I think the future is what you want it to be. I was saying to the young guys earlier that it's important, like what you're saying with regards to retailing. He's a fashion designer. He tells story. The story is through his garments and his collection. Most creatives, that's what they do. Artists, that's what they do. I'm a businessman in the business of fashion. I tell my stories through my business. And one of the things that I've done, and Jenna was talking about it earlier, is I've moved away from just being a clothing brand into being a lifestyle brand. And that's where how we've created our showroom has helped us to become that. So within the space of our showroom, we've got an experience lounge. In our experience lounge, we've got it's a beautiful bar-looking setup. So we do experiences. In there, part of this is to educate our consumers. And a lot of our consumers are uneducated. I always say to people that everybody at some point didn't have money, and they got money. There's somebody they look up to who wore Gucci, and they said, because I have no money now, I need to go and buy Gucci, you know. But it might not necessarily be, Gucci might not necessarily be your brand. You might not feel comfortable in it. Your brand might be that small niche brand, you know. And for me, I've started educating my clients, you know, to say, because I see the amount of knowledge and appreciation they get from how I educate them about garments. You know, when I sit with a client, our first consultation is always at least an hour and a half. I educate my clients. My clients are corporate executives, politicians, and CEOs. I educate them about garments, about garment construction, about what goes into making a suit. They need to understand it so that they can appreciate it. I teach them how to take care of the garment because it's very important. For me, I would say you're making an investment into this garment. You're not buying it, it's an investment. So it's important for you to know what goes into it and how to take care of it. And that's where I believe that the future is going, to where you want it to go. So for me, it's and I was saying to them earlier that, you know, my vision is to build the next LVMH of Africa. You know, I started out as a clothing brand. We're moving into experiences now. We're doing wine tastings, we're doing whiskey tastings, we're doing fragrance pairing, we're doing experiences that are teaching our consumers about their lifestyle. So I look at my consumer and I say, what do they consume? What do they drive? Where do they eat? What do they drink? What fragrances do they use? So those are the aspects that I'm bringing into the brand to say that is the future that I want to see in my business. And so for me, to young people is, let the future of fashion be what you want it to be. Don't be afraid to play outside of the comfort zone. Look at what is it that you want to do. I've always, when I was doing my research, when I was learning about the fashion industry, one of the brands that I really studied was Louis Vuitton and the history behind it. And then I got to know about LVMH. I looked at it and I studied it, and it really intrigued me, you know, the growth and what happened there. And for me, that's when I got the light bulb moment to say, this is actually what I want to build. I want to build something like LVMH for Africa, you know, a brand that Africans will be proud of. And, you know, she was saying earlier in terms of to and drip. And funny enough is I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was saying that there's a generation of entrepreneurs that, you know, when you get the opportunity, somebody needs to make it happen, actually, funny enough. So when I started my business, it was myself, it was Skinny Spoon, it was Lazy Maboti, it was Theo Batu, it was Tepo of Luxury Car Reps, it was Tepo Gym Maker. We used to hang around together, all of us in 2015, funny enough, and Skinny Spoon's office, because Skinny Spoon was a successful one back then. And I look at us now, and I look at our businesses, and we've come so far. And I was saying to them that we need to create a space where we'll sit down and tell our stories. Because we all have different stories, we all have different ideas, but we went and made it happen. And that's what I want to leave young people with, to say, the future of fashion is what you envision it to be. It might be different from what I envision it to be, but remember that the vision that you have, it was God-given to you. And some people might not understand it. Because the vision, when God gives you a vision, He gives it only to you. You might not be able to tell it to other people. But once the vision starts to unfold, people start to understand it. When it comes to industry, I think focusing on local production is important, you know, but also at the same time, we need to focus on producing quality garments. You know, like she was saying, that we can't produce garments overnight. We need to make sure that we take time. And one of the questions I got today was, when I started my brand, what to focus on, was it more the business or the product, which one came first? For me, it was the product first. Product development is very important in my business. You know, before we introduce anything, I need to test it out for at least 3 to 6 months. I need to take it through rough things. You know, test it out and make sure that I'm comfortable with the product, I'm going to be comfortable with the client language, and going outside of it. So that's very, very important, that we focus on producing quality garments that we personally, yourself, you are happy and comfortable to wear, and you're proud, you know, when you see somebody wearing it, to say, that is my garment. You know, so it's very, very important, you know, to also to look at purpose. You know, purpose purpose is very, very important as well. So when you have all those things aligned and everything else will fall into place, but not miraculously, you need to put work on it, but everything else will fall into place. So going forward, I'm very optimistic about the future of fashion in South Africa. And I believe that there's a new sense of change in the environment because people want to support local.
Yeah.
You know, people want to support local, they want to buy local things, and I see it with every time we get a new client that's referred. I get my business through referrals. Also, 80% of my business is through referrals. You know, our clients will refer. Our clients will even phone and say, listen, I have a colleague of mine that I want to introduce to the brand. I'm going to set up an appointment for him. Make whatever he wants, I'll pay for it. I just want to introduce him to the brand. And from there, the client is hooked, and we get repeated clients. The last point I want to make is social media. Social media, guys, it's like she was saying, if when we were growing up with social media, yeah, it would have been a different story. It's good and bad, depending on how you view it and how you use it. You can connect with people from different parts of the world, you know, and you can make things happen. And you can learn from each other as well. And that's what I've seen with social media. For example, I mean, just I think last week or 2 weeks ago, there's a video I did. I like doing styling videos. So I posted a video of myself getting ready and saying, this is how I put together an outfit. Innocent video, I posted it. And lo and behold, that thing has gone viral. The last time I checked, I think it was at 4 p.m. I think it was sitting at 900,000 views. Just one video I posted of me getting dressed. Through that video, I've received requests from Malawi, from Tanzania, from Nigeria, across the African continent. And you know, sometimes you get inboxes and you click to see who is this person. You click into their profile, this person has about 2 million followers. And this person is somebody important in Nigeria. This person is somebody important in Tanzania. And that's what social media does. You know, it's opened up opportunities for me. Now I'm speaking to people on opportunities for me to travel to Malawi. I'm speaking to people on opportunities for me to travel to Nigeria. And that's what social media does. So don't look down on social media. It's powerful. It can be able to open doors for you guys. It has for me, and I see it working for you guys as well. I mean, you guys are very good at it. We just still learning. We're trying to make it happen.
That's amazing. And also, it just shows you that it took a while to get to that style and to where you were in that video, for instance. It's not an overnight success. We don't have that in fashion. We don't have that in business in general. And that's how even we connected through LinkedIn. You know, that's how the connections, and you have to be open to that. So, I mean, that's just the lasting impression that you just gave me there. And as long as it's not the Prince of Arabia who's offering you 100,000 rands, and just be careful of those ones, okay? Okay, excellent. So what I'm going to do now, thank you to our panelists. I really think they deserve a round of applause. I am opening up to the audience for questions, and then we do have a Q&A for the audience on Menti as well. But I think because you guys made that here, you deserve to go first. So I can definitely give the microphone. Would you please introduce yourself and ask a question? So if you want to ask a question directly to one of the panelists, please just ask the name, specifically on the online space. If you want to make it general and be anonymous online, you can do that. If you want to do anonymous questions here as well, you can also use Menti.
Hi guys, Tanu here from Sunday Times. You know, I really love the answers you guys gave on the future of fashion. And I was really thinking about, you know, beyond the designer, this is a bigger community, it's a bigger value chain. And within that community value chain, there's influencers. What are your thoughts on the future of the fashion influencer in this country? Is there a future for them, or what can they actually do to be impactful within what everyone is already doing?
think I'll take that one. I don't want to, but as you were saying, I just thought about something. And I'm probably going to just hate a bit, but I don't want to hate.
Be true.
Okay, I'll be true. The only thing that I would like to urge, I think there's a future for influencers. I think as someone here, this is where the hate is coming in. I used to be a fashion editor. And then they came in and wiped us out, literally. And that's not a problem. So here we are, okay? But so it's actually, I'm realizing it's levels. I'm dealing with a lot of things. So it was that. And now here we are, no magazines, all fashion editors, we're just like out and living our best life somewhere else. But that's okay. Everybody else has room. But where I would like to see an improvement and just an adjustment is just showing people that it's not just about buying clothes and showcasing them on social media, but it's also about just looking into that global warming, sustainability, how we're caring for the planet. I still haven't seen that element of how most influencers, I'm sure they're eco-influencers, but just, I guess, the commercial general influencers, how they're impacting that space. Because I was privileged to go to Milan a couple of years ago with one of the influencers, and it was surprising to me how they live in terms of they have like outfits that they're going to, shoot in Milan the whole afternoon and shit. I'm thinking this is a suitcase just for, just to get by, but it's a suitcase for 6 outfits for day 1 and day 2 and day 3, and that's okay. It's fun and it's it's cute. But I think we need to be careful with perpetuating the idea about clothing is just that disposable, and it's just not, We have to figure out how to go back to connecting with the idea of I've bought something, I'm going to use it, how many times I'm going to wear it. Because like research is showing how we're wearing our clothes less and less and less. And so if you're going to be an influencer today and you're aiming to just shoot even more outfits, for the space that I'm in, it's just very questionable, and for students, young students who aspire to that life, because it is a lucrative life, it's just something just to, I think, bear in mind.
I think I like what she said in terms of the space that the influencing world is in. It's more about only wear an outfit once and discard it. And that's not reality. We need to get to a space to say, how do you get mileage? How do you, minimalism. We need to have influences that speak about minimalism. It's important because of the sustainability of our ecosystem. When we always utilizing our influence to say, I'm working with brands and I'm wearing new things all the time and all of these things. It's saying to young people that you always have to have a new outfit. And that's creating that whole thing that we have to say, what happens now to the wardrobe that's falling, all those other clothes, what do you do with them? Do you discard them? We have industries, players like H&M, who are doing great in terms of bring back the clothes that you don't need, we'll recycle them, and let's have influencers that come into that space and be able to speak about it. To say, it's okay to have this garment and wear it 5 times and wear it 10 times and get mileage from it. That's the reality of life. I think for me, the future of influencers must be also cognizant in terms of where we're going. Sustainability is very important. When I do, I'm an influencer of my own brand. When I do the stuff that I do, I always repeat stuff. I don't want to live this life of saying that I have so many people. Always ask me, how many suits do you have? Honestly, I don't know how many suits I have, but I give away a lot of suits. I give away stuff to a lot of people. I identify people who are similar structures to me. I have to make suits every season because there's new fabrics that come out. And for me, that's kind of marketing. But I give away a lot of stuff to people that need them. So we need to get to a space to say, it's okay to wear garments and get mileage from it, because that's the reality of life. So for me, the future of influencing is also on educating people. It's not just about consuming, because now it's more focused on consuming. influencers more focused on consumption. It's also important to educate people to say it's good to consume, but at the same time, you need to think about the future, the sustainability, the education part of it. For me, that's very important.
If you feel strongly about it. Okay. What I do want to say on that,
I think what influences, if I can add to it, I think what influences are based on relationships, what feels really strongly authentic. And I think brands are copying onto that, but it's never as authentic when it comes from someone who's not speaking of their own experience and speaking from the ground level. But there's an interesting journey to go on. I think they're moving away from that in some ways. So whether it's as legitimate as a future career as it is now, I'm not sure. But the idea that they've gotten onto relationship consumption as well is a really strong one that maybe, as our panelists have said, can adapt and change for the future.
Hi, my name's Adina. I want to ask, if maybe it ties in a bit with the previous question. Do you think, while building a brand, obviously you need to pare back a little bit on creative design at times so that you have a market and not just do something in void. As fashion designers and creative people, do you think there's a need for something outside of your brand where you can do absolutely anything and showcase your fashion as art, like single pieces perhaps or something? And speaking about someone like Deborah Magu's story, where sometimes you can tell a story within the brand, but I think very often you can't. And well, my question is, do you think that it's something valid? Is there a need for something like that?
I'll take this one because I've worked with a lot of small brands. So it's quite interesting. There's actually a designer that I'm thinking of, an involvement designer, and for the life of me, I cannot remember her last name, but her first name is Danai. And her brand is House of Stone. That'll make it easier for you to look for it. And she's actually a Lifestyle graduate. Now that I think about it, she has a now style, then Lifestyle graduate. And she is a designer, formally trained just like all of you, but she does art installations, beautiful ones, and she's now traveling the world based on art installations, in addition to her actual clothing brand, which people buy into, because she tells her stories through clothing installations. And I think she's also involved with Fashion Revolution. So she's got the whole sustainability thing around you. I think it's really important to remember that fashion isn't just about clothing anymore. As Theo said, fashion it's not just clothing, it's a lifestyle, because these garments are being worn in different scenes, different scenarios. So you're thinking of the mom, stay-at-home mom who's going to go run pick up her kids from school. What is she wearing? My day one at my new job, at this office, what is that person wearing? And if you understand a person's lifestyle, then you can feed into so many different parts. If we're going to bring back the topic of our populars like Bartosa, it's not just a clothing brand anymore. He's got homeware, he's collaborated with IKEA. So the scope of what you can do with the education you have and the creative grounding that you have as a fashion designer, it's not just theory on clothes, it's theory on lifestyle. That's what you've learned, is to understand where you fit into people's lives. And if you can understand where you fit into people's lives, the same person who's buying Matosa's jersey is buying a Matosa rug. They buy into that too. So don't limit yourselves to think that I'm a fashion designer, I make clothes. Make homeware, make perfumes, have a wig line. If that makes sense for your business, do it. Have a nail line. If you're serving slay queens, what are slay queens wearing? Have a makeup line. Why not? Because you understand their lifestyle. That's the biggest thing with the fashion education. I try and impart my clients, especially those who don't have a fashion education. And they're just very stringent, I want to have a clothing brand. You have to think beyond that. And you guys have been given the seed of creativity, and it doesn't have to stay within clothing. The world is your oyster.
I just
Can I say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I very specifically think about something that is not lifestyle, that is art, where the influencer is the fashion designer again. You know, so my question is not growing the brand in that sort of way. My question is, do you think South Africa needs something that's not Fashion Week, but that is, you know,
Like designing club,
something, art show?
like sort of a designing club where the focus is on creativity. I think we definitely, but in fashion, absolutely. Because like I said, there are designers who are in the art space, telling their stories through installations and not necessarily commercial pieces. I would love to see an event dedicated to the artistry within the fashion industry. At the V&A Museum in the UK right now, there's a whole celebration on African design and clothing and the artistry behind what we make, which is, I'd love to see that here. I haven't seen that here, where we're just taking designs from all over the continent, not just locally, but to have them hosted in a museum and just what is, especially since independence of various countries, how far is their artistic growth gone? That would be an amazing installation to see. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else. And just speaking on your influencer question and also tying into what you're saying, we mustn't sleep on micro-influencers. They're probably going to be the most important people for these smaller brands because they've got more specific stories to tell. And the micro-influencer isn't necessarily somebody famous, it can just be your best customer who's got 1,000 friends on there. That can make or break a business. So yeah, don't sleep on the micro-influencers, they're very, very important, and they're probably going to tell more genuine stories than somebody who's got 3 million followers. 3 million followers can change your business, but 1,000 followers, dedicated followers, I mean 1,000 sales, 1,000 people came to me, 500 people came to me in one go and said, I'm interested in your brand, I'll be so overwhelmed. Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot. But the life-changing numbers are millions, but the things that make or break businesses is hundreds. Yeah. But yeah, with the art installations, yeah, I agree with you there. There is an artistry that we're not celebrating, that a lot of creativity shows.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
I'm squeaking as a bird, I apologize.
Hello. So I'm a fashion student. So for a fashion student, how important is it for me to, while I'm studying, also like do something on the side, like start a brand or like I don't know, try to intern for other companies and things like that.
So, end of last year, it's a question about finishing my third year, what am I going to do next year? And I've spoken to Viraj about it, I've spoken to Jenna about it. Oftentimes when you apply for an entry-level position, on LinkedIn they'll call it an entry-level position, but then they'll say, we hope you have 3 years of experience, which that's not really an entry-level position. You have to know yourself and know what you're capable of, and obviously time management comes into play with this. But I think it is important to work while you study, even if it is just, say, 2 days a week, doing a retail job for a brand or something like that. Number one, it's something to put on your CV. It sets you apart from other applicants. It teaches you self-discipline. It's very important for skills development. And it is a foot in the door. The moment you know someone, you're going to get to meet other people as well, and it could in the future, the moment you have that degree in hand, whoever you were working for at the time can say, you know what, now that you have a degree, how about we offer you a more permanent position or a more higher up position? Anytime you can create more opportunities for yourself, why wouldn't you do it? So I think it's more know who you are, what you're capable of, what you can do, and also it's nice to have some extra money as a student. I'm not gonna lie, it's always nice. I don't want to say it was a mistake, but I, like I said, did waitressing and bartending, which was great salary for doing very minimal work. But now I do, in a sense, regret never taking on like some retail experience, some more fashion-focused experience.
Yeah, I think just to do that, it's important. Work experience is very important because it teaches you certain principles. You know, when you get CVs of two different people, one is work experience and one doesn't, it's easier to gravitate towards somebody with work experience because they understand processes, they understand how, how the working environment works. When I was a student, I worked, every opportunity I got, I worked. Not because I had to. Luckily, I was on a scholarship, they paid for everything, they gave me pocket money. I was a student lecturer, I was getting paid. But I worked because I wanted work experience. Every opportunity that I got, every November, after writing exams, I used to, before that there was no sending CV to, you walk shop to shop with a CV. I'd have like an envelope full of CVs. I remember I used to go to Markham's, I used to go to Stratford's, I used to go to Edgar's, all this, because I've always loved fashion and I've always wanted to be part of the fashion industry. But because I'm a firstborn and fashion doesn't pay and you need to get something that pays well, and so I had to go and study finance. But my love has always been fashion. And during holidays, I remember the one company that I worked long for was Edcon. So I used to do stock taking for Edcon, and I loved it. We used to go to Edgar's, and we used to go to, for me, I loved being in the environment. And I remember one of my dreams, I always wanted to work for Markham's, but I never got it. It was always a dream to work for Markham's. I didn't understand why, but now I look back and I'm like, I understand why. Because I used to, the visual merchandising, you walk in there, and as a young boy at 19, 20, for me it spoke to me. So it's important to fuel your passion, to go and get work experience. And like she said, it's important to work towards what you're passionate about. You can go in bartending and waitressing and whatnot, but it's important to get more knowledge in terms of the field that you are going to. It's very, very important.
I just want to also add to that. I think I agree with everyone what they've said about we have to work. But I also think that it's one of the things that most students that I see that they take for granted is the fact that you also have to travel. I think South African students don't travel enough, I think there's so much power in traveling. Yes, we can talk about the finances, how do you travel, blah, 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 I get that. But I think if you do have an opportunity to go do something outside of the environment, I think it's quite powerful. I also think that when you do look for work, you shouldn't necessarily look for something that you love, that you want to do. This whole idea about you to be passionate, like what does that mean? That nobody really knows what that means. You can be passionate in the pursuit of making sure that you will ultimately be someone, you will ultimately have a good job, you will ultimately just contribute and be of service. But I think that you just need to get a job and experience different environments, besides traveling. So I'm very passionate about the idea about environments. When I started working, the environment where I was working at was a government environment. Never thought I'll end up there, but that environment loved me. I didn't love it, but it loved me, And what that means is that they just thought, I should get this opportunity and that opportunity and that opportunity, but eventually had to, it got to a point where it kept. I really needed to leave and find my own wings, So you never know. Sometimes you're chasing your luck. Sometimes you're chasing really your destiny, where you end up telling a story of how you ended up in Japan and you have this amazing life.
I also would recommend volunteering if it does come up. I can tell you I volunteered in my young adulthood away, much to my parents' dismay. But it does add, especially we talked, I'm going to come to you guys in a second. We talked earlier with Frontier Code, and they were saying that being in the fashion industry, like we talked about, is teamwork. It's all teamwork as well. So if you can show, and the question on the board is how do you go about finding an internship in a fashion house? And the one thing that you definitely need is to show your value. And often that comes comes through environments where you can work as a team. If that does come up in the work experience, it's great, and in volunteering, it's even better. It seems, there is a question here, and I don't know, there's two questions that I'm just gonna ask and see if you have any response to. So the first question, how does one go about finding an internship at a fashion house? And it seems that most fashion houses don't want to hire students and or graduates. And then the other one is about how do you go about starting your own fashion business without copying or almost doing the same as other designers. So I don't know if either of you, any of you have thoughts.
I'll start with the second one because, again, given my background, I get a lot of Pinterest boards and say, this is the collection I want, what do you think? And I'm like, well, if it's already exists, why are you making it? That can be your influence, but it's okay to look at other brands and other designs as a point of reference or an influence or a way of communicating with the kind of customer you want to serve. That's fine. But as fashion graduates, I really hope you can interpret those and give it your own stamp. It's impossible to completely reinvent the wheel, especially if you want to be a commercial designer. There's nothing new. All you can do is add your stamp to it to make it uniquely your own. So when starting a brand, understand who your customer is, get your brand profile, your customer profile locked down. Because if you understand that, then somebody can give you a white shirt, but your white shirt is the one that customer is going to come after because you understand their story and their life and their struggles and how every white shirt, the middle button always pops up because I'm bigger busted and you're solving that problem. Like you have to understand your customer to that micro level for you to get thousands of people who are going to follow you. There are going to be people buying from you, not even know why they're buying from you. They just know that you're a loved brand. But it starts at that micro level, understanding the small needs of that niche market. And I keep saying niche because no one here is competing with Fishini, Truwords, Woolworths, Edgar's, poetry. Don't even, like when you do your competitive analysis to figure out who your competition is, just put them aside. Don't worry about them. They operate on their own level, especially to use startup guys. You can look at them to see what kind of person shops them, what they shop for me, but that's where it stops. Beyond that, you need to look at your compatriots and complementary brands. If they're buying, if my customer likes Fenty Beauty, what kind of a girl is that? And let me start writing down, this is what her life looks like. This is where she shops, this is what she eats, this is what she's passionate about, this is what she does over the weekends. And when she's doing all these things, what is she wearing? Where is she living? Where is she sitting in? What music is she listening to? When you understand your customer on that like deep level that you know their life, that's when you create a brand that people are going to buy into. So that's my advice for anyone wanting to start a brand. It's start with understanding who your customer is intimately. When I say intimately, I mean like if you were in the bed with them. Like intimately. And that doesn't mean everyone, but it's like you can build a customer profile that will tell you she works here, she's this old, she earns this much, she shops this often, this is where she shops, this is where she eats, when she goes on holiday, this is where she goes. When she's on holiday, this is where she stays. Is she a hotel kind of girl, an Airbnb kind of girl? Is she renting a car or is she going to Uber? Like, get into it. So before you actually start designing, Theo would agree that he understands his customer. Like when you look at Theo, you're like, I know that guy. I know 15 other people I can send to Theo because he's representing his brand. I know that guy. He knows that guy even better than that. And that's why he is successful in attracting that kind of customer. He's not trying to dress every man. Not every man can pull this off. And God knows in South Africa, men don't have enough style sometimes. But the one that does, well, no, that's the guy I go to.
You mentioned the subculture.
Yeah.
So subcultures are a great place.
Subcultures are great niche too. There's a whole underground, look at queer cultures, subcultures, there's music subcultures that have a whole art subcultures. The sustainability, as much as we like to throw that word around, is there's some die-hard sustainability people who will rep your brand, like you will never have to pay for it, like 1 AdSense. because they're so passionate about that topic. And if your brand is genuinely, not greenwashing, genuinely serving that market, they will sell it for you. Yeah, so understanding your customer and understanding that market that you're serving is the key to having a successful brand. And that's a small, we say at small level only in comparison to the bigger retailers, the Zara's, the H&M's, these massive things. But it's not small for you as an individual. With you with four employees, maybe 6 years into your business, you might have 3 employees. You know, to have 1,000 people passionate about you, that's a game changer for your business. So yeah, don't be intimidated by the big guys. Understand your customer.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have one more answer, and then we are going to. I'm so sorry, guys. We're actually running out of time. Oh God, that's a puppy face. Okay, so we're gonna hear from Theo, and then I'll see how I feel after.
Okay, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying. It's very important when you start your brand, you need to solve a problem. Is your brand solving a problem? You know, I've realized when I started my brand, I love fashion and this is how I like to dress, and I thought that was cool and everybody would buy into it. It's not. You need to solve a problem that's there. And one thing I've realized is with my brand is the type of people that we attract is people who are looking for solutions. You know, people can go to the shops and buy clothes and buy suits and whatnot, but I've realized throughout doing this is the fact that there is no such thing as an average body. Off the peg clothes are made for average bodies. Nobody has an average body. Most of us, when we go to the stores, we actually need to alter what we buy so that it fits us properly. And that's the challenge I used to always have. Growing up, I was small and skinny. When it fits here, it's too small here. When it fits here, it's too big here. You know, it was always my problem. So that's when I started buying clothes, taking them to my tailor, he would do alterations. And people used to say, where do you buy your clothes? I buy them from Markhams. There's no way that comes from Markhams. It doesn't. How does it feel? And I realized that there's a gap when it comes to fit. There are people who are looking for fit, something that fits them properly, something that sits properly. And that's where the Mr. Slim fit came in. It was accidental, and I found a nice way of dealing with it. I always say it's meant to fit in a way that makes you look slim. So that's how we sort of explain it. But we don't sell garments, we sell solutions. Clients come to us because they're looking for a solution. And that's what I sell, that's my business. The other question is, how do you find internships at fashion houses? Fashion houses don't hire students. I don't know, I've never been a fashion student who went to internships, but when I started in the fashion industry, so I left my job in end of 2014. Beginning of 2015, I was officially unemployed, and I was like, what do I do now? I want to learn about the industry. How do I do it? I don't have a fashion degree, I don't have experience, who's going to hire me? I went to Narrow Media, I went to Destiny, and I knocked and I said, hi guys, this is who I am. I would like to learn about fashion styling. I have experience, but I'm willing to volunteer. Can I just come and just learn? They're like, okay, that's fine. You can do that. Started on Monday, I went. They were doing their first photo shoot. They took me to sourcing, where we were shopping, different stores, sourcing clothes. They taught me about fashion styling. 2 weeks into it, they offered me an internship. When I got there 2 weeks ago, there was no internship. It didn't exist. But 2 weeks into it, they offered me an internship. But because I knew what I wanted, I just wanted to learn from them. I didn't take the internship. I said, that's fine, I'm happy still volunteering. For me, Destiny Brain was my university. It taught me most of the things that I know today about styling. And it was because I took the initiative. I went to them and I said, I'm willing to learn. I don't want to get paid. I just want to learn. And when you do that, it shows initiative. And that's what I look for. I get a lot of emails, inboxes from young people wanting mentorship. But the ones that stand out to me are the ones that I see that people are taking initiative. You know, somebody who's saying, I'm based in Davao, I'm willing to relocate to Joburg just to come and be in your space. You don't need to pay me. Can me, that shows initiative. And those are the people that I would hire to be my interns. So you need to take initiative if you want to be employed, or if you want to get into fashion houses. Because there's a lot of competition.
Closed mouths don't get fed. I'm saying. Closed mouths don't get fed.
Should have learned that earlier. Okay, so we have one last question, and then we do have to conclude the evening. You did give me a puppy eye.
Hi, my name's Kat. So my question is, I hear you guys talk about the 2030 master plan. What is that exactly?
So the 2030 master plan is it's the clothing, textile, leather, and footwear master plan that was introduced by the Department of Trade, Retail, and Competition. No, Trade, Industry, and Competition. So it's essentially the government is introducing this plan to develop the clothing sector within South Africa, and they have a bunch of different steps that they're taking in order to stimulate local retail, local clothing production. They essentially want to minimize imports. They want to increase local production and local retail, like proudly South African, and then they also want to increase exports to other countries. So it's just creating employment, building the industry. I think it's something like 202,000 jobs that they want to create by 230. Yeah. So, that's right. So the plan is that by 2030, the goals that they have set would be reached, and the industry would have developed to that point. It's a very interesting read. Are you still studying? It's a great resource. It's an amazing resource.
And quite easy to find, actually. But if you want it, we have it available.
We have it. We have it. It's a very interesting read. Definitely going to help you with your studies, especially when you do have case studies about South African brands. And it's a very realistic view of the local fashion industry, because they do mention things that, sorry, I'm talking no, it's fiction. Like earlier it was mentioned that there's a common misconception that we can't produce locally because it's too expensive. This plan explains why that is a misconception, and it lays out like, okay, no, what all the costs are involved in production, and where can we save costs, and what other countries are we competing against who have similar labor costs to us. So that's what it is. Definitely go have a look at it. It's not something fun to read before you go to bed, but when you are doing research, it's a great resource.
So I do have to say, I was just informed, a little birdie in my ear just told me that we have a gentleman here from Proudly South Africa who is part of creating the master plan. Very good. So I'm going to give you the microphone just for a little bit so you can round it up and just sit here.
Hi all, yes, I'm Tseko from Proudly South African. I specifically work with the membership department, so we get a lot of local businesses, manufacturers in the country to actually, or we try to influence them to procure local, buy local, and create local as well. The main reason I'm here is mainly for the panelists as well, but also to just speak on Proudly South Africa itself. We are an advocacy campaign, and we advocate for buying local, right? Honestly, it's been hearing you guys on the panel there, it's very inspirational. I am quite new to Proudly Proudly essay, but a lot of what you speak on is what Proudly South African stands for, what we seek to influence within South Africa, not only to not only to create and buy local, but also make quality items and create quality services and create quality products as well amongst us. You know, it's one thing to make something, but to make something of quality is a little bit more attractive. And I'm an avid consumer. My dad was in fashion as well, and I used to watch him tailor. He made outfits for my concerts during primary school. It was quite inspirational to watch as well. And growing with him in that space, and now he's in the gym making space, for example, it was quite hard to find those local companies who can assist with producing or making these items as well. So being on the journey with him and being on the journey with Products as well to kind of really show the local businesses that are actually around that I don't want to say they're cheaper, but you can find ones that kind of suit your budget and suit what you're looking for, and then from there create a relationship community amongst them, and kind of just broaden your horizons when it comes to those relationships as well. So yeah, I really say buy local, procure local, and if possible, actually have a conversation with parents, right?
A long one.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really great to have you here and representing us. Okay, I do have to close off this evening, but first we have, Shaka, go, do it, quickly.
Sorry, I don't want to do a disservice to Stadio. I just want to just let everyone here and watching online that there's a fashion entrepreneurship course which I facilitate through Stadio. Enrollments are open. So please go online, either go to the Stadio website, or if you get lost and can't find it, please go to my consulting website, which is dsgnnative at .com. Sorry, I was about to give you my email address. dsgnnative.com, and just go under courses, and you'll see the Stadio sign, fashion entrepreneurship. If you'd like more information, you can leave your email address or download the info pack and contact Stadio directly. That's it.
Thank you. Again, I'd love for us to give a round of applause to our panelists. Wonderful events that we have today. Okay, so we have the privilege of having our Chief Academic Officer, Divya Singh, here with us tonight, all the way from Cape Town. Thank you for being here tonight. Divya is coming up and just giving us a little surprise/excitement for the evening. Please, Divya, make your way over here. Yes, give her a clap.
Good evening. I think there were lots of adjectives used around: amazing, inspirational, awesome, all of those things that go with it, and that comes from my heart as well. But those of you here, I think all of you here at the beginning, you might have caught Jenna use the notion of the Fellow of Stadio. The Fellow of Stadio is an award that we launched in 2022, something we're very, very proud of. And the Fellow of Stadio Award is really Stadio's way of acknowledging members of the broader community outside of academia specifically for their contribution to their discipline, for their contribution to their profession, but more importantly, because we believe that these are people who epitomize the values, the virtues, the vision, the mission, and the commitment of Stadio. The Fellow of Stadio Award is the highest accolade that Stadio can confer on any person. In May 2022, so May of this year, Stadio announced Theo Ngobeni as a Fellow of Stadio. Theo, it's my absolute privilege, it's my complete honor, it's all of those other wonderful things. On behalf of Stadio, the management, the leadership, to hand over the award to you and to welcome you to the Stadio family. For those of you who don't know, Theo will always be the first Fellow of Stadio in the School of Fashion. Thank you.
Congratulations, Theo. I think it's been a beautiful journey to get to this point, and I cannot wait to see what happens next with your involvement in Stadio. And we're going to have Marina come up, and he is also going to have a very quick, but after Marina. Please, Marina, we'd love to hear from you. Marina is the head of school for the School of Fashion. She is our guiding light on most days, especially the dark ones.
I actually had to make the notes because I know that that tender age where the metaverse, as well as my memory, comes to quite scary. So for me, just to summarize for this evening, I'm going to break it down. I started with the alphabet and I decided to cap it up to 6 letters. So the A is for the aha moments. I think something that I'm taking away is that your future, everything you do is made out of little aha moments. It's not one continuum. It's not like you start and you end with a straight focus. It's those little moments that actually make it up, make it worth fighting for, and making sure that you've got a clear mind space about where you're headed. The B is for business, and I think that's something that really stood out to me, is to say that, and I think Ingrid, you mentioned it as well, the expectation is not that you exit tomorrow and suddenly you are this absolute star within the business. It's about the process, it's about learning the ins and outs, the front office, the middle office, as well as the back office. They all come into play. The ethical decisions in business, the sustainability, taking a risk in becoming your own entrepreneur, taking a risk in that space. Fashion is not all about the art or the creativity. It's about actually respecting that very big business component. And C is the one that I like the most. It's the collaborative part. If we sit here together tonight and we look at all the different voices, the different fields of expertise, what makes fashion great, it's a great form of collaboration. It moves between art, between commercial spaces. It's about respecting and honouring individuals that tell stories, people that can take a story and put it into a creative space on your behalf. It's really a brilliant space of collaboration. I do think that is the essence of what makes this industry so bankable that the DTI has actually decided to put it in a 2030 master plan. The D is for destination. I do think when I look at all the talent, currently, future, up and coming, that South Africa should be a fashion destination. It should be aligned to Milan, it should be aligned to those ones. It's a destination because we've got so many stories to tell, so many bright colours, so many interesting takes on design principles, about media, about how we do things. The E is for emerging experiences. Things are coming. We've got the metaverse, even though we don't know what's going to be. I agree, let's be someone who receives it, let's rather be the architects and create a South African space in it. The F is for finding your niche, finding your fashion, finding yourself in this industry. And the G is for gratitude. Thank you to every one of you coming out on this evening, bracing the cold winter with rain, if I could become Cape Town. So thank you for coming out and embracing it. Thank you to the people at home sitting in and listening, asking questions, engaging. Thank you to every one of you being here, the organisers, Divya travelling all the way to join us this evening, it's special. The Stadio team, the Stadio students, to everybody here, thank you. And then to our 4 panellists. A great thank you from all of us. Listening to you, your expert voices, your different fields of expertise is humbling, and it's really inspirational and comforting to know that actually the future of fashion is in good hands. So, on behalf of Stadio, I'm going to hand you each a little gift to say thank you.
So sorry, you can't taste those gifts through the video or even other means, but it really has been a privilege to have everybody with us today. Okay, we are going to, I think we've done enough talking. Genuine surprise. So I'm going to end off the evening with, I think, Theo's motto, which is work hard, dress well, be humble. Please join us outside for some soup and some champagne and some networking.